Hey you! You're watching a clip from the DynamiteGizmo podcast. This is not the full episode, but if you want to see the full episode, make sure to click the link in the description. And remember, like, comment, subscribe. Do it now! Here's the clip. Okay? But let's talk about Bryce Mitchell and Jean Silva, alright? I love the fighting nerds, as does everybody. They're undefeated, they're great, they have a bunch of aura, yada yada, but honestly, fuck Jean Silva, dude. Fuck Jean Silva. When it comes to this matchup, fuck him. I don't want him. Get him out of here. I don't want him to win. I don't care. I don't give a shit. If it was any other matchup, I would be all for Jean Silva. If it was any other matchup, but because of the fact that it is Bryce Mitchell, I want Bryce to win more than anyone else on this card. I want Bryce to win more than Patty. I want Bryce to win more than Volk or Diego or Pitbull or any of those motherfuckers. If I could have just one win on this card, it would be Bryce Mitchell. Okay? Now, for those who don't know, I'm going to give you a rundown of the situation and why this is so exciting and why it's so thrilling and why I care so much about this. Okay? So before... even just last month, but before last month, Bryce Mitchell was always a kooky character. He believed in conspiracy theories and whatnot, and very hardcore religious, but he was always beloved in the UFC world. For the fans and for the folk who follow UFC, Bryce Mitchell was a very beloved character. Everybody knew that he was crazy, or at least he was perceived as crazy and liked conspiracy theories and believes the earth is flat and all this stuff. But it was all overlooked because he was just a genuinely good guy. He's a farmer. He's just trying to live his life. Raise chickens, give eggs out for free, you know? Preach the word of God. There's nothing wrong with that. We loved him. Okay? And when the custom shorts were first being introduced, Bryce Mitchell was one of the first people, he might have even been the first people, to get custom shorts. I think he was the first person to get custom shorts. And he hasn't even had a title match up yet. He hasn't had a title match. As it sits nowadays... And the custom shorts are literally only about a year into the making. It's only people who have title fights who get custom shorts. But Bryce Mitchell got his own custom shorts. Take a look at these. Okay? Bryce was the first. And he got fucking camouflage shorts. They're nice. Thug nasty, dude. Thug nasty. Alright, so that just shows how much he was loved and how much of an icon he was. Because there is no one else who has those privileges. There's no one else, unless you're fighting for the belt, you're not getting custom shorts. I don't think... So maybe there might have been... Well, I guess Patty has custom shorts, but he was still after Bryce Mitchell. Okay? So Bryce was beloved. Loved. Everybody loved him. And just last month, if you haven't seen it, he decided he's going to start his own podcast. Great! The Bryce Mitchell podcast. He called it Arc Insanity. And immediately, the first episode was released, and within minutes of it being posted, the UFC community exploded on Bryce Mitchell for what he said in the podcast. He went from one of the most kind-hearted souls, the most beloved souls in the UFC roster, to the most hated person that the UFC had to offer. And it was because of this here. Now, I couldn't actually find the actual podcast episode because I believe it was taken down. So this is a clip that someone else posted, and it's their commentary over it or something.
I really don't think that he was, because I honestly think that Hitler was a good guy based upon my own research, not my public education indoctrination. I really do think before Hitler got on meth, he was a guy to go fishing with.
All right, so I definitely
Yeah, so that's just a little taste. There was a lot more that he said within that first episode of the podcast. And if you know me, you know I'm a fan of podcasts already. I've been a fan of podcasts before I was even a fan of UFC. So when I see that nowadays that a fighter gets a podcast, I'm like, okay, I'm in. So I watched this episode like almost immediately as it came out, before shit even hit the fan. And then when it got to this part and I heard that, what I was thinking was, well, this is kind of expected behavior from Bryce, but it's fucking crazy that he's saying this shit right now. But I didn't think anything of it. I didn't think like it was going to be as big of a deal as it was. Because when you listen to the whole episode in context, you can understand what the fuck it is that he's trying to say. You know, he says like, okay, I think Hitler was a good guy, yada, 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 before he was on meth, blah, blah, blah. But when that's taken out of context, you're like, oh my God, he was an advocate for World War II. He was an advocate for the slaughtering of Jews. No, that's not what it was. Still crazy to say, but it's not that wacky. Like, it's wacky, but it's not as bad as everyone made it out to be. But it didn't matter, because that's what happens in this society nowadays. It's not nearly as bad as it was. If this happened like in 2015, 2016, 2017, if that happened then, Bryce would be done. That'd be it. There'd be no more Bryce. Well, maybe it's different because in the UFC, but... And that's the good thing about UFC, is when people do crazy shit, people say crazy shit, they don't get cut. Because Dana White is such a solid fucking dude, and he's like, it's free speech, motherfucker. I'm not going to cut Bryce Mitchell. He's a fucking idiot. And I fucking think he's the dumbest person I've ever seen, which he actually said. But I'm not going to cut him because he said something. You're allowed to speak. You're allowed to speak. What do I got here? I think I have another clip. Yeah, this is the clip of Dana. Okay, so after this episode was released, once everyone was freaking out, Dana had had just finished a slap fight fucking or a power slap event, and he was doing the post-fight or post-slap press conference, and people were asking him about it, and this is what he had to say.
This business. For all of you that hate Bryce Mitchell, you get to see him hopefully get his ass whooped on global television. I mean, what do you want me to say about it? You know where I am with free speech? We're disgusted by it. I think he's probably one of the dumbest, literally one of the dumbest human beings. Let's not forget that this is a guy who took a drill through his nutsack, then had to reverse it and put the drill back out of his. That's the level of stupid that we're talking about here. And I could probably go on for 10 minutes talking about how dumb Bryce Mitchell is. But guess what? Bryce Mitchell has a podcast.
I believe this was episode 1.
What a way to start. But that's the world that we live in now. Dumb people who are really stupid and really ignorant, can have a voice. We don't have to agree with it. We don't have to like it. I'm giving you mine and the UFC's position on what he had to say. And this is no different than things that I've said about Strickland, But I will say this. Out of all the dumb, ignorant shit I've heard in my life, this has to be the dumbest and most ignorant.
Last thing from me.
It's nothing new for Dana White. He speaks his mind. And on the Media Day interview that was uploaded or streamed today, people asked Bryce about this statement that Dana White's had to say. And Bryce was like, it's totally cool. I still have love for the UFC. I still have love for Dana. He doesn't like what I said. That's fine. And you know what? I love that. I think that's fantastic. And I'm sure they're still on good terms. It's just Dana just thinks he's a dumbass. And that's fine. And you know what? Everybody needs to learn from this whole situation. Bryce said some dumb shit. Dana didn't like it. But who cares, man? You're not going to cut him. He didn't do anything to actually deserve to get cut. So that happened. That was about a month ago. Almost exactly a month ago. Okay, so at that point of that press conference that Dana was just at, there was no fight booked. There was no fight booked for Bryce. It was still just up in the air. But he was the most talked about thing at that time. Everybody, I'm talking about specifically in the MMA space, no one would shut up about Bryce. Okay, everyone was like, what I can't believe he said this, yada, yada, blah. He was all over MMA news. It was nothing but Bryce. Okay, now about at this same time, fuck off with these. Jean Silva had just fought, I don't know how to say his name, Baghdadsarian, Melsik. But not only did he fight him, he annihilated him, and he did it the Jean Silva way, where he's over the top, lovable, in the octagon, helping guys up, dapping them up, and then he just fucking slammed him, knocked him out, came down with some punches, and then aura farmed. Okay? So at the time, Bryce Mitchell was going viral because of this negative Hitler shit. Jean Silva was going viral for being like a dominant force in the UFC. We've seen Jean Silva uprise. We've seen him come up. We've been seeing him do good things. But this was that fight that really put him over the edge to really make him well known. So this Jean Silva fight happened at the exact same time that Bryce was in his negative downfall. So they hit at the same time. Okay? The spotlight was already on the fighting nerds in general. People were starting to know about the fighting nerds. All of them. Okay? They all got fucking what's that company called that makes t-shirts and stuff? Full Violence. They have a Full Violence line. So what do we got? And they're both. So now we've got Jean Silva in the spotlight, and we've got Bryce Mitchell in the spotlight. Jean Silva's wanting to get into the ranks. Bryce Mitchell is in the ranks, but he's not too high. Okay, and everybody's hating on Bryce Mitchell, and they want to see him get knocked the fuck out. That's the good thing about UFC. Now we've just had this Jean Silva guy fucking dominating. Okay, this is the perfect matchup. You guys want to see Bryce get knocked the fuck out? Well, here's the guy. This guy's next in line for ranking anyway. So there was just talks about it. People were just talking about it in the space. In the MMA space, on X and stuff. People were like, oh, John should fucking go against Bryce. That should be the next fight. Everyone was talking about it. And guess what? Like, if I remember correctly, it was almost immediately after it actually happened. It got confirmed. And it got confirmed to the point where when I saw the news that it got confirmed, it happened so fast that I was like, this is not real. I'm being pranked right now. There's no way that this actually, and it was real, and it happened. Okay, so basically, like I said, if Jean wins, it'll move him straight upward in the ranks. Also, keeping the fighting nerds collectively at 0. They have a collective record in the UFC of 0 losses. What I should say, not fights. But if Bryce Mitchell wins, that's his redemption arc. Okay? Bryce needs this win Not only to keep a spot in the rankings, but also to be in the good graces of the MMA community. He needs to be that beloved character again. And you might be saying, well, why would anyone forgive him? He said a bunch of crazy shit. Well, if you're anyone else who doesn't have an open mind and doesn't see that Bryce Mitchell is just a good person and a good character, you can go watch the initial UFC 314 press conference. So the day before the UFC 313 press conference last month, they had an initial press conference for this fight, for 314. And basically, Jean Silva and Bryce Mitchell were the highlight of the night, okay? Because remember, we got all this build-up that I just mentioned, and now they're at a press conference for a fight that's going to happen a month from now. They usually have the press conferences a couple days before the fight. Like, we're going to have one tomorrow for 314 again. But we had one before 313. Okay? So going into that initial press conference, everyone's booing Bryce Mitchell the second his name is mentioned. Boo, boo, boo. Because this is, again, still basically immediately after the shit that he said on his podcast. So as soon as Bryce Mitchell's name is mentioned, he's getting booed. And Bryce is trying to recite some phrases from the Bible. But Jean Silva brought a globe to make fun of the fact that he's a flat earther. And he's interrupting Bryce Mitchell the whole time. He's being very loud, aggressive. He's barking. He's doing his barking thing. And telling Bryce Mitchell to fuck off. He's saying, fuck Bryce Mitchell, over and over again. So going into this, you're thinking Bryce is the bad guy, Jean is the good guy. But after that press conference, now the tables have turned. Now, Jean Silva is the bad guy because he's being cocky, annoying, and way too over-the-top aggressive. Because the fame is starting to go to his head. Like I said, he's starting to rise up. He's starting to become well-known. But now the fame's going to his head. It's going to his head. And he's getting way too cocky. And because he portrayed himself that way on stage, and Bryce stayed calm, cool, and collected, now the roles immediately flipped again. All right? They were that way to begin with. Then Bryce was hated. Now he's liked again. It's crazy, the quick changes we've been having. All right? So we'll just watch a clip from that initial press conference because it's an iconic moment. And I think it's going to go down as one of those iconic press conferences, like one of the Conor McGregor ones or whatnot.
And last thing I had, I just wanted to ask Bryce Mitchell quickly. Bryce, this has been it's been a tough couple of months, I would say. Obviously, we're not used to hearing boos for you. There's been some controversy, I guess. Kind of your first public appearance, I just want to ask how important it is for you to be back to what you do best, and maybe with an open mic, is there anything that you want to address to the crowd today?
And Jesus said,
Hey,
remember,
fuck Bryce
if the
Mitchell.
world hates
Fuck
you,
Bryce Mitchell.
they've hated
Fuck
me
Bryce
first.
Mitchell. Fuck Bryce
Is
Mitchell.
this servant greater
Fuck
than
Bryce
his master?
Mitchell. Fuck Bryce Mitchell. Fuck Bryce Mitchell. Fuck Bryce Mitchell. Hey, brother. Fuck Bryce Mitchell.
I'll start with you.
You barking up the wrong tree, motherfucker.
That moment right there, dude.
Hey, Bryce Mitchell. Look, Bryce Mitchell. Please.
Jose,
Jose, go ahead, my man. What do you have?
Okay. There's more, but it kind of goes the same way as this. So you can see why Jean Silva's now the hated one. That was an annoying little cocky fuck right there. So basically, that's kind of like we're at the point we're at now. And we've been seeing Bryce Mitchell. You know, he puts out videos now and then, but it's always about Jesus. And he's saying he's having nightmares about demons, saying that John Silva's a demon. And John Silva is known as the Lord. That's his nickname. He's got Lord on his tattooed on his chest. So it's such a crazy fucking dynamic that we got here. It was already good versus evil, but the fact that Bryce is so religious and he's saying John Silva is a demon and John Silva is referred to as the Lord, it's just all this shit is just fucking piled up. It's crazy. This is crazy. All this stuff. It's like we're in a simulation or something. It's like this isn't real. It's like this was all orchestrated. Like, if this was the WWE, you'd be like, oh, this is for sure scripted. There's no way this isn't scripted. But it's not. This is one of those iconic moments where it's like, oh my God, how is this not scripted? So that's why I genuinely want Bryce to win. I need Bryce to win. I need him to win. Because he has to get that redemption. If Bryce wins, the place is going to explode. And if he wins by knockout, I'm sure he's probably going to win by submission. But if he wins by knockout, it's going to be so much crazier. So there's also other aspects to think about it. Is like when it comes to actually like fighting, like how is it going to play out? How is it actually going to play out? All right. I was going to talk about the demon stuff. But really, we don't really have to touch on that. I just wanted to give a brief summary of what's been happening up to this point. And now we kind of know. So we're gonna break down Bryce Mitchell and Jean Silva, and then we're gonna talk about the possibilities of what could happen, okay? So when you look at Bryce Mitchell, he's got 8 wins, 2 losses in the UFC. His only 2 losses in the UFC were to Josh Emmett and Ilia Topuria. All right? So Josh Emmett is the hardest hitting 145er in the division. Unlike Jeremy Stevens, Josh Emmett smokes guys. He did lose this last weekend on the fight night to Lerone Murphy. But when he does connect with people, he hits. He hits hard. And when I do have the clip, oh yeah, I'll show the clip in a bit of Bryce Mitchell getting knocked out by Josh Emmett because it's one of, if not the most brutal knockout in UFC history. And then, of course, his other loss was to Ilia Topuria, who's the former featherweight champ who vacated it. And now Diego and Volk are fighting for that on the same card. So if you're going to lose to 2 guys in a division, these would be the guys to lose to because they're dominant fucking forces. Okay, back to Bryce Mitchell. The majority of his wins in the UFC are by decision. But in terms of like overall, he's got more wins by submission than anything else because he's known for his jiu-jitsu. All right. I was going to say he's known for his Brazilian jiu-jitsu, but today during the media day, when asked about his jiu-jitsu, the journalist or whatever you call them asked him, "Are you going to use your Brazilian jiu-jitsu on John Silva?" And he said, "I'm going to use my American jiu-jitsu." He doesn't want to say Brazilian, which is fine, whatever, dude. But you can say he's stupid. You can say he's whatever. Whether or not you like Bryce Mitchell, you got to admit his jiu-jitsu is good. And there's even a video clip, which I have here, of him demonstrating his iconic twister move. I think this is the twister. Yeah, it says it in the title. But he's demonstrating it to a class of students or whatever. But also, Eddie Bravo was there. And I'm pretty sure they're at 10th Planet right now. But he's demonstrating this to Eddie Bravo. And Eddie Bravo is not only impressed, but he's surprised. And he's like, I never even would have thought of this myself. So let's check this out.
Okay, now we're in a fight. And I pull it tighter. And I'm hitting him. What are you gonna do? You can't sit there and block forever. You're gonna go unconscious. What are you gonna do with that left hand? What do you need back? You need your right. What? I would have never figured that out.
You're opening it up.
Huh? Pretty good, right? Pretty good. He's showing Eddie Bravo stuff. You would thought Eddie Bravo knows everything. And that's one of the other crazy things I notice about, I guess, mixed martial arts in general, not just jiu-jitsu, is people are still discovering things. There's still things that can be done where people are like, I never would have thought of that. I didn't even know you could do that. And it's like, how is that not? It's crazy because I don't do it myself, but I guess there's shit that you can just constantly learn, which is cool. Back to Bryce Mitchell. Okay, so Bryce Mitchell, before he was in the UFC, he was the V3 featherweight champ, defended the title once before moving up to another organization. He has received Performance of the Night and Fight of the Night bonuses, multiple. Currently, as it sits, he is on a one-fight win streak, coming off a win against Kron Gracie. Now, as we know, the Gracies are iconic members. It's an iconic name in the world of combat sports. You hear the name Gracie, you're like, these guys are unstoppable. When it comes to Kron Gracie, not so much, but that's a whole nother discussion. Either way, it's a win, and it's a win over a Gracie. But let's check out that brutal-ass fucking knockout from Josh Emmett. I couldn't find like an actual clip of the fight other than a Chinese version of the pay-per-view. So, but you don't have to hear what they're saying. You just got to see what's going on.
미첼이 안 받아 먹습니다. 그 떡밥을. 뒤쪽 손이 이제 잘 빠져주는군요. 네, 미끼를 안 물어요, 미첼이. 그래서 뒤쪽 계속 빠져나가면 걸립니다.
So it's not so much the knockout, it's the aftermath of the knockout. Because he stays knocked out for quite a while and his body starts to seize up and he begins convulsing. Donald Trump's there, I saw. See, he's like, look at him. Okay, so like it goes on for another little while. Like it takes him a bit for him to recover from that. And it was honestly kind of scary. Now that I think about it, there was more scary fights. Knockouts, I should say, but that one was one of the more recent ones. Okay, now we'll move on to Jean Silva. Jean Silva has 4 wins, 0 losses in the UFC. He's fairly new, but he's dominating. He's one of the 4 male fighting nerds in the UFC. There's about 48 or so fighting nerds in total at the Fighting Nerds Combat Club in Sao Paulo, but when it comes to the UFC, there's only 4 of them that are male, and then there's 1 female in the UFC who's a fighting nerd. Jean Silva won the Dana White Contender Series, followed up by winning his next 4 fights within 1 year. Every one of his wins were by TKO or KO, receiving back-to-back Performance of the Night and Fight of the Night bonuses. He's dominating, dude. He's dominating. He's on a 12-fight MMA win streak. 80% of his wins are by KO or TKO, with only 2 wins by submission and 1 by decision. Okay, so that's an important factor to consider there. He's a knockout artist. Okay? And when we listen to these other guys talk about Jean Silva in training camps and whatnot, he's not that great on the ground. He can do it. Of course he can do it. They're in the UFC. Of course they can do it. But I think Bryce is really going to have that one up on Jean Silva when it comes to the octagon, and he's for sure going to utilize that. And I think that's really going to throw Jean Silva for a loop. And I think that is going to be how Bryce Mitchell wins. It's hard to predict anything. It's hard to say how anything's going to go in the UFC. For the most part, there is the odd one where it's like this is guaranteed to go one way. There's no doubt in my mind. This is one of those matchups where it could go either way. But I want Bryce to win no matter what. And I'm going to vote for Bryce. And I am going to believe that Bryce is going to win. And if he doesn't win, this will be one that I will be very upset about. Will we see Bryce submit Jean Silva and give him and the Fighting Nerds their first loss in the UFC? Or is Jean going to knock Bryce into another dimension worse than Josh Emmett? Because it could happen. All right, not saying he's going to fucking knock him out as cold as Josh did. But if he gets knocked out, Bryce is going to have to crawl back. He's going to have to crawl back into not only the rankings, but I mean, it's not going to knock him completely out of the rankings, but he just needs this win to get back into the spotlight, to be beloved once again. And I'm confident that's going to happen.
Tap here to watch the full episode of the Dynamite Gizmo podcast.